Yeah, we back. Now today's gonna be a quick video. Once again, we gotta come back and we gotta debunk the propaganda. Now, Tariq Nasheed earlier today, he dropped a video entitled, "Is Ibrahim Traoré selling out to the Russians?" Right? Now, of course, once again, like I said, this comes off the heels of an exceptional report that he received from the World Bank in terms of his economic performance in the country, right? See, the captain, he not bothering nobody. He sits back, he minds his business, right? Invest in the agriculture, stimulate the economy, balance the national budget, buying weapons to protect his territory, building gold refineries to refine the gold and keep the profit circulating in the economy. You see, the captain just minds his business, right? But yet and still, we have these baby Langleys, right? That's what I gotta call them now. We got these baby Langleys, these wannabe Langleys walking around trying to spread propaganda. But thank God I'm here to debunk it. Now, in this video, it seems like it was an open conversation, Tariq and his followers and supporters and also some detractors, whatever. So I want to start off with one of his foot soldiers that was in the conversation, spreading CIA propaganda against the captain. And then we're going to come back and we're going to, come in and out with the commentary. Let's go.
From the Russians, seems like, oh, this is support. It's not support. It's supposed to look like that on the surface. It's a way for them to project strength, because even right now the Russians really can't help anybody else out. They even calling on help from North Korea to help with this Ukrainian problem. But that aside, I see African nations do this a lot, where they trade one master for another, and he referred to the Russians as friends. Now I've been watching the situations. I'm like, oh, this nigga finna get duped again, and I'm thinking to myself, he has to know better. And I was like, I'm trying to figure out, like, why the hell is he doing this? And I don't know what he has going on, but the fact that he's stockpiling gold like he should, it doesn't make sense to just hand it shit over to the Russians. It doesn't make sense.
Now, this guy, one of Tariq's foot soldiers, was in the conversation saying that the captain is handing over all of his gold to the Russians. Now, I already did a video debunking that a couple months back. We actually did the calculations to where Russia and Burkina Faso signed a deal on one gold mine, right? One gold mine. Now, the captain has about 17 large-scale industrial-sized gold mines in the country and hundreds of small-scale artisanal gold mines. So Russia, that one gold mine we calculated was only equivalent to less than 5% of the total gold supply in Burkina Faso. But let these guys tell it with the State Department rhetoric, the CIA rhetoric, the NATO rhetoric. The captain done gave away all the gold, right? Now, see, that's the problem when you get too patriotic, right? Sometimes you get so patriotic that you believe that the Western white man's adversaries are also your adversary. So you, as a black man, are sitting in the United States and you raging and ranting about Russia, as if that is your adversary personally. That's the white man's adversary. You over here, Russia, the Russians. Man, you a black man. Man, relax. You got totally different geopolitical interests. But anyway, let's continue.
What combatant pact do you guys have with Russia? You know what that means? That means if France decides, you know what, we're going to go in and protect our investment, because under international law, they actually are, okay to do that, because they actually have a deal with them. They can literally go in, and since it was a coup, they did violate international law. They can easily deem Ibrahim a war criminal, and that'd be very easy for them to do, because they basically control the damn UN. If they do that, they can literally declare war, go in and kill them, and there's nothing anybody, including the Russians, would do about it.
Did the Russians ever enslave Africans?
Oh, hold on, wait. What about Russians enslaving Africa? What does that mean?
The Russians never enslaved Africans
because they didn't have access to the sea like that. That's why.
He didn't even know that.
Yeah, it wasn't because of a moral thing. I know you ain't trying to say
he didn't even know that. He didn't
have access to the sea. That's the only reason.
You're using speculation. You don't know.
No, that's the truth. That's what this word.
You don't know that. So why wasn't they involved in?
You nigga, you have a map? What do you mean? They don't have access to the sea like that.
They're a landlocked nation. That's why they go to war with the Ukraine.
They couldn't transport your ass. They couldn't transport nobody. That's why, not because of a moral thing. Come on.
Wait, Tariq, now you're not African descent?
Oh, stop it. Okay, here we go. Wait, what about Oprah Winfrey? No, with that weird deflecting bullshit. Here you go with this old weird ass deflecting. When he gets stomped down, this fool didn't know that Russia was landlocked. He tried to give them props for not having slavery. Stop.
Yeah, but you're saying that's the reason why they didn't. That's just speculative.
No, that's just common sense.
How would Russia do slavery in the 1600s? How would they do it?
Right. You guys is Monday morning quarterback. The fact is, Russia was never involved in the slave trade. You could do your Monday morning quarterback and say, because they was landlocked. Well, Germany was landlocked and they was involved in the slave trade and carving up Africa.
All right, we back now. In that part of the clip, you saw Tariq's foot soldier. He said that the French government will be justified in taking military action in order to protect their investment. And he says they will be justified because, according to him, Ibrahim Traoré violated international law and he could be deemed as a war criminal. Now, like I said, this is just patriotic garbage. This is straight up CIA rhetoric, NATO rhetoric, State Department rhetoric. And then you got Tariq Nasheed ranting and raving about some imaginary Russian colonization that never occurred. Basically saying that, yes, Russia was not involved in carving up Africa or the slave trade, but the only reason they didn't do it was because they didn't have the capacity or the logistics didn't work out or whatever. Basically making up fan fiction in his head. But what is not fan fiction is what actually occurred. We know who came into Africa and was slaughtering civilians, right? Take a look up on the screen. Here you got two gentlemen by the name of Paul Voulay and Julien Chanoine. These were the two men, the two commanders who were involved in invading the current day, modern day Sahel nations, right? Niger, Burkina Faso, right? These men were involved in carving that up and attacking those nations and claiming it for France, right? Take a look up on the screen. In command was Captain Paul Voulay and his lieutenant, Julien Chanoine. The captain, a 32-year-old son of a doctor, was said by his officer colleagues to mix a true love of blood and a cruelty that was coupled with a sometimes foolish sensitivity, while the lieutenant, Julien Chanoine, the son of a general and future war minister, Charles Chanoine, was judged impulsive and ruthless and cruel out of cold-bloodedness as well as for pleasure. Both had already proved their ruthlessness and efficiency 2 years before when they invaded the Mosi kingdoms and conquered the capital of Ouagadougou. So listen, while Tariq Nasheed is concocting some imaginary scenario in his head of Russia in the alternate universe invading Africa, we know who really came into Africa and was slaughtering innocent women and children. Take a look up on the screen. Voulay and Chanoine reunited the expedition in January in the easternmost French post in modern Niger. The column was by now 2,000 men strong, well over the number that their supplies could sustain. Even though they were in French-controlled areas, Voulay's troops started pillaging, looting, raping, and killing. Among the most brutal episodes was the sacking of the village of Sensani Hausa on the 8th of January, 1899. 101 people were killed, among them 30 women and children, to set an example in retaliation for the wounding of a couple soldiers. When at the end of the month, the mission left the Niger River to pass into the semi-desert areas extending east. Their march became an endless orgy of looting and killing. Now, listen, all that other nonsense y'all were talking about, well, Russia, they would have done this because of this. That's like saying Germany would have won the world wars if they had this instead of this. Well, at the end of the day, the fact of the matter is they lost, right? The fact of the matter is we know what really happened on the historical record, right? We don't got to make up fake history, right? Like I said, these guys always coming with some fake history, some alternate history, some alternate scenarios, pushing some fake bullshit, right? Now these guys pushing State Department propaganda, right? These guys are sounding like the journalists at the New York Times and the Washington Post with the fake propaganda, bro. That's like dealing with a serial killer and saying, well, the guy down the street, he would have killed people too if he had a knife like me. Well, at the end of the day, we're talking about you, right? You actually killed people. We don't got to make up imaginary scenarios about the guy down the street. And just for the simple fact that you're trying to deflect to the guy down the street, that goes to show that you're simply trying to run cover for somebody else, right? You're trying to divert attention away from somebody else. Oh, let's talk about the guy down the street and what he would have done. No, let's talk about this guy right here and what he really did. And at the end of the day, when it comes to geopolitics, it's about defending and advancing my personal interests, my strategic interests, right? My personal survival, my economy, my citizens, right? That's what it's about. It's about forming alliances based on mutual benefit, right? There are things that I have. There are things that you have. There are things that I want. There are things that you want, right? So let's trade. Let's empower each other, right? Let's do business. Let's engage in commerce. And when it came to France, not only do they have a massive body count, millions and millions of dead black bodies on their record and on their rap sheet, but at the end of the day, they were not engaging in mutually beneficial trade. They were not engaging in mutually beneficial commerce. And there's a reason why the anti-French sentiment has been bubbling up so much to the surface in the recent years. So at the end of the day, anybody trying to run cover for France, right, and concocting fake scenarios in order to downplay the severity of the crimes against humanity perpetrated by the French government against our people in all different parts of the world, all different type of mass graves all over the place from the atrocities they committed. Anybody trying to run cover for that, you are simply an agent of some foreign powers behind the curtain. Because ain't no way a black man gonna deflect away from France to make up some fake scenario, imaginary scenarios in an alternate universe about Russia colonizing Africa. Listen, you are an agent. And on top of that, what is this major focus on Russia? Because last time I checked, the captain has diplomatic relations with a series of different nations. So why is your focus only on Russia? For example, take a look up on the screen. The captain also has relations with Turkey in a variety of different sectors, right? How come you never hear the same rhetoric targeted at Turkey? Right? How come you guys are not ringing the alarm about Turkey and creating fictional scenarios about Turkish colonization of Africa, right? Because you guys are simply regurgitating rhetoric you heard from somebody else, right? This is what happens when the patriotism goes too far, right? At the end of the day, as a black man, you have your own individual geopolitical interests. You have your own adversaries. You have your own history. You have your own narrative. When you start raging against Russia and you start sounding like a journalist at the New York Times, you have inherited the adversary of another man. You see, I understand why the Western white man feels the way he does about Russia. They have the history with the Cold War and the Soviets and things like that. They got a history going way back. You see, the black man, you have your own history and narrative, right? You don't got to be a cheerleader and ride in the back seat with the white man. You have your own story, your own interests, your own allies, your own adversaries, right? So, like I said, man, it's nothing wrong with being patriotic, but sometimes you got to make sure you don't start sounding like a journalist at the New York Times. But anyways, like I said, take a look up on the screen. The captain also has relations with China. So how come you guys aren't ringing the alarm about China? Well, you know, some of you guys do ring the alarm about China. I'll admit that. It's usually Russia or China, which is ironically the main adversaries of the Western white man, right? So you only see people raging against Russia and China because that is who they've been deputized to rage against, right? But for example, the captain also has relations with the UAE, right? So how come you never hear any negative propaganda about the captain having relations with the UAE, or the UAE coming to take over Africa, the UAE coming to colonize Africa, when it's already been known that the UAE has been involved in destabilizing multiple African countries, has been involved in funneling weapons to various militia groups across the continent, causing chaos in Sudan, right? That's one of the main areas. In the Congo, the UAE destabilizing the Congo to get the Congolese gold. And also in the Sahel, in Ghana, a lot of gold gets smuggled out the continent, right? Take a look up on the screen. Several reports and studies indicate that a significant amount of gold from Africa, particularly from artisanal and small-scale mining, is smuggled out of the continent and frequently ends up in the UAE, right? Take a look up on the screen. Billions of dollars worth of African gold is being smuggled into the UAE each year. But of course, nobody rings the alarm against the UAE the same way they be talking about Russia, because take a look up on the screen. The UAE committed $1.4 trillion of investment to the United States. So everybody looks away. Nobody talks about the UAE. Nobody rings the alarm about the UAE because they paid everybody off. So you're never going to hear anybody else like Tariq or any of his sock puppets and his foot soldiers ever talk about the UAE, because their daddy, Mr. White Man at the White House, he doesn't have any problem with the UAE. So because he has no problem with the UAE, they don't have no problem with the UAE. But because the white man has a problem with Russia, they have a problem with Russia also. Like I said, man, you have to understand you are a black man with your own interests and your own adversaries. Stop being a mascot for the interests of another man and another group. You have your own interests. I would actually respect it more if you guys actually raised the alarm against the UAE, which is actually a very predatory country against the continent, responsible for the deaths of many Africans and instability across the continent. But nobody rings the alarm against the UAE. You want to run your mouth about Russia, 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 because you're a sock puppet. You're a sock puppet for Western forces. Now, let's continue. Now, if you remember, a couple months back, I did a video about the captain having a meeting with President Nicolas Maduro of Venezuela, right? I even seen the captain meeting up with the ambassador from Cuba, right? So even strengthening relations down in Latin America. And a couple months back, we saw Donald Trump sent out a special envoy to Burkina Faso and met with the foreign minister in the capital, right? So the United States, you know, they're trying to reconcile and get back on good terms with the captain, especially after earlier scandal that happened earlier in the year with General Langley, right? And then, of course, the captain has also met with Iran, right? Diplomats from Iran as well, right? We even seen the captain meeting up with the Catholic priests, right? So even the Catholic priests coming by to say what up to the captain, right? And then, of course, we know he has relationships with Russia. But like I said, when it comes to Russia, it's simply like any other nation. You have interests with a variety of different nations for a variety of different reasons, offering a variety of different things, right? It's called diplomacy. It's called being a diplomat. It's called being a statesman. It's called being a head of state. You see, Tariq, you don't know anything about that. That is way above your pay grade. That is way above your pay grade. You got to stop. The only thing you have ever built is a janky museum, and the only thing you have ever sold is DVDs. You don't know anything about the management of a national budget. You don't know anything about establishing a gold refinery. You don't know anything about imports, exports. You don't know anything about securing your territory and buying military equipment and armored vehicles and drones. And you don't know shit about that, brother. You know, this is way above your pay grade, boy. This is way above your pay grade. But like I said, man, I can clearly see that you know, you and your fan base have gotten drunk off the patriotism, and now you are rooting for France. Because when you start saying that bullshit, well, Russia would have done this and Russia would have colonized this and that. Listen, man, those talking points and those arguments come straight out of the playbook of the DGSE, right? That's the French CIA. So listen, when you as a black man start saying the same exact thing as Western foreign policy strategists, you have to really look in the mirror and reevaluate. You as a black man should never have the same position as a Western foreign policy strategist. You should have the complete polar opposite position at all times. But anyways, man, you're obviously going to continue to pump out the propaganda, and I'm going to continue to debunk the propaganda. You know, that's what it is. That's what it is. I saw that you are now pushing the propaganda into overdrive. Now that it's been confirmed that the captain is actually making economic progress in the country and in the fight against terrorism, you have come out with all your foot soldiers to discredit and send out misinformation about the captain and tarnish his credibility. Listen, it's all good, man. Keep doing your job. Keep doing your job, right? Listen, you got a big house. You got to pay off that mortgage. You got, you know, a stay-at-home wife. You got to pay the bills. I understand you probably stressed out. You got to do what you got to do to make that money, boss. Anyways, it's your boy Neferkari, that's Salim, back in the Billy. Yes, indeed. 21 Cannons, first single off the next project. Pin comment at the top. Check it out. Subscribe to the Patreon, NCD1814, and I'm gone. Peace.
Walk in the room and I stop all that talking. Stay on alert and I'm moving with caution. Feeling like baby, I'm up in New Orleans. Feeling like Stunner, feeling like Wheezy. Look at my nigga, my wrist is Fiji. Trying to get cash, I don't wanna be famous. Look at my nigga, my wrist contagious. Ain't no stopping when I get started. Ain't no stopping, gotta go harder. Drop that top, whip go brainless. Chasing that check, I ain't trying to be famous. Whipping that Benz, feeling like spaceships. Everything official, ain't no fake shit. Doors unlocked, community gated. Look at this ice, bet they gon' hate it. Look at my life, enemy vanquished. And it's on sight, gun in your faces. Look at that love, turn to hatred. Kill my ops like a Haitian. Ain't no love, ain't no honor, ain't no trust, ain't no conscience. I ain't perfect, but I'm honest. Enemy lurking, enemy watching, enemy stalking, taking photos 24/7. Straight surveillance, hit a new spot, change location. Shorty got wet off my cadence. Just seen ice, but I got papers. Ladies love me, and I got flavors. Ain't no love in these streets. Nigga, yo jaloux, yo méchant. Got them chains off my feet, by the sword and by the gun. They throw flowers at my feet, and they say that I'm the one, and they say that I'm the target. When they see me, they pay homage. Shorty talking about divesting, she with Malibu most wanted. When I go and get that check, I put it up and make it stack. Tracking that bank, whipping that Benzo. When I pull off, it go fast. Need a Fortune 5 accountant just to count up all this cash. Got these Sambos trying to sue me just to make me walk it back. Walk in the room and I stop all that talking. Stay on alert and I'm moving with caution. Feeling like baby, I'm up in New Orleans. Feeling like Stunner, feeling like Wheezy. Look at my nigga, my wrist is Fiji. Trying to get cash, I don't wanna be famous. Look at my nigga, my wrist contagious. Ain't no stopping when I get started. Ain't no stopping, gotta go harder. Drop that top, whip go brainless. Chasing that check, I ain't trying to be famous. Whipping that Benz, feeling like spaceships. Everything official, ain't no fake shit. Doors unlocked, community gated. Look at this ice, bet they gon' hate it. Look at my life, enemy vanquished. And it's on sight, gun in your faces. Look at that love, turn to hatred. Kill my ops like a Haitian. Ain't no love, ain't no honor, ain't no trust, ain't no conscience. I ain't perfect, but I'm honest. Enemy lurking, enemy watching, enemy stalking, taking photos 24/7. Straight surveillance, hit a new spot, change location. Shorty got wet off my cadence. Just seen ice, but I got papers. Ladies love me, and I got flavors. Ain't no love in these streets. Nigga, yo jaloux, yo méchant.